Jessica, you ready to go? I'm glad you're here. Okay, friends, we're going to get started, and I'm going to call to order the Regional Planning Governing Board for Thursday, August 10th, 2023, and ask Mr. Clerk for a roll call.
All right. Paul Anderson for Ed Lawson.
Here.
Devin Reese.
Here.
Donald Abbott.
Here.
Clara Andreola. Jenny Breckus.
Here.
Mike Clark.
Present.
Naomi Dewar.
Here.
Jean Herman.
Here.
Kathleen Taylor.
Here.
Charlene Bybee for Diane Vanderwell.
Here.
And non-voting member Beth Smith.
Here.
All right. We have a quorum.
Thank you so much. I'll ask Charlene Bybee, would you lead us in the salute to the flag? Ms. Bybee?
Yes.
Would you lead us in the salute to the flag?
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Clerk, item 3, please, the election of the officers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jeremy Smith for the record. Item 3A is election of the chair. We're looking for a nomination, a second, and a vote for that position.
Thank you so much. Ms. Stewart.
Yeah, I'll nominate you, Mr. Reese, your vice chair, and I'd like to nominate you to be chair.
Okay, I have a motion. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Thank you so much. Any discussion on this item? Ms. Breckus. the floor is
Yeah.
yours.
Obviously, it has to be one of the 4 Reno people. And unfortunately, I'm not in a position to support Mr. Reese at this time to be elevated as the Reno person and represent this body as chair. I don't believe he has the disposition to lead in a collegial way that we need, particularly being a regional representative board, nor do I believe at this point in time he has the focus to lead this board on the significant work program we have and some of the items that we have on the agenda is following. I think we need a chair who is focused on the work program that the board has adopted. My observation of him on this board over the last months or so has been that he does not have that, nor does he have the disposition to lead this important board at this time. Thank you. I will not support the vote.
Any additional comments at this time? Mr. Clerk, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm going to agree with Ms. Breckus. I think based on the fact I look around and I see what's taken place in other boards, then I'm just not happy with the leadership that I see there. That's number one. Number two, with your pending election, I don't think it's appropriate to chair this committee with an election cycle. And so I can't support you either. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone else? At this time, I'll call for the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chairman Smith for the record. Next item is item 3B. It's election of vice chair. Also need a nomination and a second and a vote on that. And that'll be from Washoe County this year.
I'd like to make a motion if I could. I'd like to nominate Jean Herman.
I need a second.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion at this time? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Nay.
Nay.
I'm going to have to do a roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Yes. Paul Anderson.
Yay.
Devin Reese.
Nay.
Donald Abbott.
Nay.
Clara Andreola.
Nay.
Jenny Breckus.
Yay.
Mike Clark.
Yay.
Naomi Dewar.
Nay.
Jean Herman can't vote for herself. Can't, correct? She can't?
Hold on one
Yes,
second,
of
Mr.
course
Clerk.
she
She can-
Ms. Herman?
Oh, yay.
And Kathleen Taylor?
Nay.
And Charlene Bybee.
Aye.
1, 2, 3. I have
Ms.
5
Prunty.
yeses and 5 noes, I believe.
Yep.
I
Ms.
believe
Prunty?
we have a tie, right?
Yes.
I apologize to the board. I had to leave my office in a rush this morning on my way here today, and I did not bring my copy of the bylaws. I may impose upon our director, if he might have one, I can address the
Well,
issue.
let us take a 5-minute recess and get you
That would be
a chance to
wonderful.
set.
Thank you,
We'll be in
Mr. Chair.
recess.
According to your bylaws, in the case of a tie vote on any motion, the motion will be considered lost.
Okay.
Therefore, the motion to nominate Commissioner Herman as vice chair is deemed denied.
Okay.
All right,
Thank you so
Mr.
much.
Chair,
Yes,
I'd like to make an
Ms. Dewar.
alternate motion since that one did not pass. I'd like to nominate Clara Andriola.
Okay, I have a motion by Ms. Dewar,
I'll second.
a second by Ms. Taylor. Any questions or comments at this time?
Yeah,
Ms. Breckus?
I do. You know, a lot of people make comments about appointees. And, you know, I don't see them ever as lesser members on the body. You know, and we have 2, which is very unusual on Reno's. But when it comes to elevating someone as chair or vice chair who has not stood before the voters, that's what I don't do. I will not nominate to a leadership role on a regional body someone who has not stood the test of the voters. So I will not support Ms. Andriola to this role. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Breckus. Any other questions? Mr. Clerk, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm going to echo the comments that I made earlier. When we have somebody running for re-election in an election cycle, I think that the focus that they should have is their election and not necessarily have time to vice chair a board. So I'll be in opposition as well.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments at this time? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. Mr. Clerk, do we need a roll call, or were you able to?
Can I just get clarification? Was that Member Clark and Breckus? Did I miss
Well,
another
let's do a roll
against?
call. If you
Yeah.
haven't gotten it, someone else
Yep.
hasn't gotten it.
Yeah, okay. Paul Anderson? Devin Reese?
Aye.
Donald Abbott?
Aye.
Clara Andriola?
Aye.
Jenny Breckus? Mike Clark?
Nay.
Naomi Dewar?
Aye.
Jean Herman? Kathleen Taylor?
Yay.
And Charlene Bybee?
Aye.
Okay, I believe we have 8 for and 2 against.
Thank you so much, Mr. Clerk.
You're welcome.
Item A4, approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Okay, I have a motion by Ms. Andriola, a second by Mr. Abbott. Any additional questions or comments at this time? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item A5, or actually just 5, approval of the minutes. Can I get a motion, please?
I have a suggestion for a change.
Okay.
It says that Chair Lawson, called for the meeting. Mr. Lawson, I believe, was on vacation. I think I chaired that meeting. And so just a small detail. And shout out to Councilwoman Bybee for pointing that out for us. With that change, I'll make a motion.
Okay, I have a motion with an annexation from Mr. Abbott. Can I get a second, please?
Second.
Second from Ms. Taylor. Any additional comments or questions at this time?
Mr. Chair, I need to abstain on this motion because I was not in attendance at the meeting, so I'll be abstaining. Thank you.
Understand. I have the same issue, Ms. Bybee, so thank you for pointing that out. I'll call for the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Mr. Chair, I'm abstaining as well from that.
Thank you for that, Ms. Andriola was not on the board at the time. Or maybe she... Well, let's see what we get to.
Point of order.
If I could-
Point of
Hold on,
order.
please.
I'm calling it for a point of order.
Ms. Dewar, the point of order is yours.
Thank you. I want to point out that abstention is not required even if you were not on the board or you were not present. It is actually a duty and requirement to vote on everything that comes before us unless you have a conflict of interest. I will defer to our attorney to advise us, but I've been advised by other Washoe County attorneys and our own attorneys to this point, so please.
Ms. Prunty, can we get your weighing in here, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Jessica Prunty for the record. Abstention is not required merely because you were not here present. However, if you feel that you cannot dutifully vote on the item because you were not here and you do not know about the accuracy of the minutes as reflected, that's another item. I'm not sure if we have a quorum given the number of people who are not here. This could be an item that could be continued till next meeting for approval.
Ms. Prunty, I am capable of voting because I both reviewed the materials, watched the meeting, and have reviewed the record. So I'm happy to vote in the affirmative, but it looks like a couple of my colleagues are not. So
If we could, if by a show of hands, who is going to abstain from the vote?
I think because I'm an alternate
Yes.
and I'm not in the midst of what you guys are doing, I think I'm not as prepared because I don't know the information updated. So as an alternate, I'm going to go ahead and abstain.
thank you, Ms. Pivey.
Perfect. I think
appreciate
we
it.
have
Looks like we have a
sufficient.
quorum.
Yes,
Okay,
thank you.
so we'll call for the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Motion carries unanimously. Mr. Clerk, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jeremy Smith, the record. I would ask if we have any general public comment at this time.
We have not received any for item 6. I will just ask the two individuals who dropped off public comment, please let me know the item number for the future agenda item that you want to comment on. Thank you.
Okay, no problem, no general.
Okay, Dr. Smith, do we have any changes or movement on the consent agenda?
No, it is, I think, as published.
Okay, can I get a motion on the consent agenda?
So moved.
I have a motion by Ms. Andriola,
Second.
second by Ms. Taylor. Any additional questions or comments at this time? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 8.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jeremy Smith, the record. Item 8A is a public hearing item. It's a regional plan amendment for the Piranha Solar, possible adoption of RPG Resolution 23-05. Regarding that amendment, we have Regional Planner Chris Tolley to give us a presentation.
And Mr. Clerk, before we begin, are we doing public comment at the beginning? Do we have any on this item?
We do. We have 2 for this item, and we can take it perhaps after Chris gives his presentation
Thank
before
you so
the
much,
motion.
Mr. Tolley, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, governing board members. Chris Tolley, Team RPA. This item is a proposed amendment to the 2019 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan for the Piranha Solar Project, case number RPA 23-003. And to start with the overview, the Piranha Solar Project includes an amendment to the regional plan to establish a new regional utility corridor and regional utility site. The amendment would memorialize in the regional plan the placement of a new electric substation and a new transmission line that carries 60 kilovolts or more, which are associated with the overall project. For the subject case, the Regional Planning Commission and Regional Planning staff both recommend adoption of the proposed amendment. And finally, the regional form map shows the subject property towards the northern portion, the northwestern portion of the map. To continue with the overview, the Regional Planning Commission reviewed the subject case at their June 22nd meeting, which included the subject RPA that we're considering in this item, and the project of regional significance, and that case number was CR 23-010. PRs considered the actual transmission line and substation, and the solar facility as a whole, due to it being greater than 5 megawatts. The Regional Planning Commission, as noted, approved the PRS portion of the project and recommended adoption of this RPA. The Piranha Solar Project includes a request for a 65 megawatt photovoltaic generation facility and a 125 megawatt battery energy storage system, a 345 kilovolt substation, and a 5-mile, 345 kilovolt generation interconnect, or GenTie, line connecting the proposed substation to the Fort Sage substation. As with the previous map, the actual solar facility and the substation are located on the northern or the upper portion, the hatched area. And there's a blue line that goes basically straight down to the existing Fort Sage substation, in which the GenTie line would connect. And then a bit of an overview, a brief overview about the policies, pertinent policies here, 2 of them anyway. Policy RC6, which connects the requirements found in the Nevada Revised Statutes regarding projects of regional significance, and those further defined and adopted by the Regional Planning Commission, of which a new electric substation, 60 kilovolt or more transmission line, a facility that generates 5 megawatts, are all listed and required to be approved by the RPC prior to their implementation. Again, the RPC found the Prana Solar Project in conformance with the regional plan. And then additionally, policy PF11, which is the reason we are doing this process tonight, requires that all regional utility corridors and sites are shown on map 3 of the 2019 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan. And then the review criteria, which is called out by policy RC10. There are basically seven criteria sections. And then highlighted in blue are the ones that all highlight from the analysis presented in the staff report. In particular, the use type is consistent with the rural area in which this property is located, or with the regional utility corridor and the existing other substations that were shown on the map, all part of the rural area. And the policies found in the regional plan regarding public facilities, services, and natural resources, such as the regional utility policies, regional renewable energy generation, resilient region, and sustainable development. Furthermore, the policies regarding natural resources contained in the 2019 regional plan are sufficiently addressed by the Washoe County Master Plan as a whole, and also through the Washoe County Planning staff's analysis of the project. Finally, multiple conditions were included with a special use permit to adequately address the concerns identified related to the sage grouse, as well as cultural resources. And then on to the proposed motion, which you can find on the screen or on page 34 of the packet. This does conclude my presentation. However, Team RPA, Washoe County staff are available for questions. Thank you.
Ms. Rotali, thank you so much for the presentation. I'll come now to the body and see if there are any questions. Ms. Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chris. I have a quick question. I need some clarification on the electrical transmission line that was denied by the Washoe County Board, and if there's any relevance to the transmission line, and then the site that we're looking at today. I wasn't sure I understood that correctly.
Let me get back to the map, but it is our understanding that the Washoe County, both Planning Commission as well as Washoe County Board of County Commissioners, they approved both components of this, and there were two special use permits, one of which addressed the solar facility, the other addressed the transmission line going from the subject site down to the Fort Sage substation. So those were approved through the
Okay, so the
process.
electrical transmission line was approved too?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions? Ms. Herman?
Not a question, just a comment. I just wanted to say that I was one of those that voted against it. And for one reason, we found out that the company that's doing these projects is stationed and going to end up with the contract is from Singapore. So it kind of bothered me, and that's why I voted against it.
Thank you, Ms. Herman.
I have a
Ms. Stewart.
So I just want to understand, thank you. I want to understand, I mean, has any member of the public raised an objection to this? Has there been any concern about the power line or the station in terms of who lives near it? You know, there's always a lot of concern about electricity in one way or another, which is why these things come to us.
Yes, I'll provide the regional perspective and then also invite the Washoe County staff. But there was public comment, I believe, both at the Planning Commission level and then the Board of County Commissioners level regarding, I think the primary concern was regarding fire service, fire suppression out there, and that the facilities may lead to a greater fire risk, and that would I think be primarily the transmission line, but also potentially the substation on site that has the generate or the energy storage system. And through the process at Washoe County, they invited, or they at the very least solicited comments from the fire side of it to look at the battery as well as the facilities. I don't believe there were any specific concerns raised by the fire side at Washoe County.
Well, let me explain a little further. So I'm a huge solar proponent, but I do have concern about electrical lines where, to your point about the fire. So over in the McCarran area, South McCarran, near Collin Ranch, we've had 2 fires started by electrical lines. And, people know about those fires. It was Collin Ranch Fire, and it was called the Pine Haven Fire, I think. And NV Energy now, this is a different company, but NV Energy has the ability to coat their lines and treat them in such a way to reduce shocks. Now, I don't know the total reason that fires started. One I heard was a Mylar balloon that got tangled in the line. And the other, I do not know what the other was. I think there was a spark, actually, in a storm. And so I just wondered, is this a particularly flammable area? Is there concern about that? I mean, over in Collin Ranch, it's not like they have big trees where these got started. It was pretty much sagebrush and that kind of, pretty much a desert vegetation. But I didn't know if this had come up, and I think going forward when we're putting in new lines, they are starting a whole program at NV Energy to renovate the lines and coat them to reduce fire risk. And they started in the Tahoe Basin. I've met with them extensively on this, is why I'm bringing it up. They said that they were actually going to do it in other places in northern Nevada. So I don't even know what the connection here, if as an independent company, they have to tie their transmission line into NV Energy somewhere, probably. So do you know more about it?
I'll invite either Washoe County staff, if they're going to talk about specific building codes, or the applicant as well.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Applicant to Washoe County.
Good afternoon, Sean Vimery. I'm an engineer, and I'm here on behalf of Prana Energy. You brought up great questions. I can answer them one by one. First, the transmission line is going to be designed to the International Fire Code. During the permit process for the transmission line, there was an appeal from the community members, and they raised concerns about fire safety, construction, access. We wrote copious amounts of technical responses. I believe close to 100 questions were asked, and we went through every one of them and presented all the technical details. So it will be tying into the NV Energy's Fort Sage substation, and needless to say, it has to meet the standards.
Right, so there's a standard, and then there's a higher standard. And so that's why NV Energy is coming along and hardening, I think they call the line, to make it more fire resistant. And I didn't know if that was going to become a new protocol for new lines. I mean, it's hard enough to go back and retrofit all the existing lines across Nevada, but here we have a new one, and it just seemed like it was an opportunity to build it to this higher standard, right up front.
Yeah, great point. It is perfect timing because the transmission line is actually going through the systems impact study with NV Energy. We are moving into the final study phase actually on Monday. We have a phone call with NV Energy. So any new standards that are adopted will be implemented on the new transmission.
But at this point, we would consider it a standard line, not a hardened line.
Correct, to the current standards that NV Energy follows.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Dr. Smith?
If there's no other questions from the board, then...
No, it looks like we...
Oh, I'm sorry, okay.
Ms. Herman?
Thank you very much. I just wanted to clear up the question on the fire. I'm in pretty close contact with the Board of Supervisors in Bassin County, and we just have discussed a lot of this issue because it troubled them too as well. Being so close to Herlong, this whole project. The other thing was there was a pretty big misunderstanding about the fire service. It was like like it was kind of not told exactly to the truth scale that I'm used to. And so, and that was where the Board of Supervisors from Lassen County discussed that matter with me and made it pretty clear that there was some misunderstandings, let's call them. That's what the problem was with the fire. They were saying that the volunteer fire crew in Doyle would be their fire crew, and they're a volunteer fire and have no facilities for, they do not have the service available for that area. So that was the question. So
Let me ask.
Thank you, Ms. Herman. Hold on one
Yep.
second, Ms. Dewar. Anything further, Ms. Herman?
that's all I have for right now.
Thank you so much. Ms.
I
Dewar.
thought I'd ask Mr. Smith or Dr. Smith. I mean, do we have the ability to put on conditions?
No, legal counsel.
Jessica Pruney, for the record, no, this body cannot condition approval of a regional planning amendment. The item before you is a regional plan amendment to add the line to the maps. If you are curious about the underlying project,
Yes.
under your regulations, you can continue this item to get more information if you're curious about it. But this is the item that we have before us, is simply the amendment of the map to reflect the original utility corridor.
Our whole role is to establish the electrical transmission corridor, but the actual thing that's in it is not under our purview. Is that what you're saying? Like the details of the project are not really relevant, is what you're sort of saying? It's just, are we going to allow electrical transmission through this area?
Exactly, because it is an electrical transmission line of a certain voltage. It comes to this body for a regional plan amendment. It was already found in conformance because it's identified as a project of regional significance. The project itself and the substance of the project was found in conformance by the Regional Planning Commission when they conducted the PRS conformance review, I believe at their last scheduled meeting. So the item before this body is whether or not you want to amend the map to allow for the location of this regional utility corridor.
So I'll just say one more thing, and I'll try to stop then. I always have concern when we're routing any kind of major corridor, whether it's a pipeline or electrical, anything that's very long and covers much territory. This goes through several states, right? At least 2 states. It goes across several counties, like it goes south of Carson City, out in the middle of Nevada. So what I feel very inadequate as far as information to be able to make a decision about whether this is an appropriate place. Now, maybe they're only saying in the Washoe County portion, which is all we have purview over, right? In the Washoe County section, is that okay? And I do feel like I do not have enough information. I'm just being as honest as I can. I like to know what I'm voting on. I like to know all the ramifications. I don't know much about the case. Who said what? The 100 comments. Is this a great place? It could be. I don't know. One thing I have a question about is how wide is the corridor? Are we talking 20 feet or 200 feet or a half a mile? That's something I mean, it's a thin line on a map, but do you know?
Yes. Well, we represent these. They're not necessarily truth on the ground, but the line is representative of the actual easement that exists. It's not, the thickness of that line doesn't equate to
Right, so what is
the easement
the
width.
corridor width?
Yeah, and that would be defined by, I think, the National Electric Code. 60 feet.
60 feet. Okay.
And just to point out and we can bring up our regional plan viewer too, but there are the 3 existing substations down there on the southern portion of the site. There is an existing, yes, there we go.
Great.
There is the existing transmission corridor that this will all tie into. And when the Fish Springs substation and actually solar facility came through, they also have a connection line between their solar facilities right around where the pop-up came up and then further to the north. So there are other existing transmission corridors out there and substations as far as we're presenting the information. This would be, again, an amendment to the map to represent those. But those corridors are also indicative of there being the transmission facilities out there.
Well, here's one more thing that, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Okay. One more thing that just concerns me with corridors is just that I don't know all the other intersecting corridors. And generally in a corridor, for example, there's one in my ward going along Virginia Range. Okay, it's a big electrical line. and it has a road under it, so they've had to install a road to take care of the line. There may never have been a road there before. I don't know, maybe this is already a corridor for other transmission lines, or maybe there are other ones intersecting. What I worry about is cutting up Nevada, putting roads everywhere, creating spaces where people can't go. I don't know what all the requirements are to protect the area of your line, you know? Do you know?
The transmission line actually follows a public road,
Already, an existing public road.
Yes.
Thank you.
which is called Rainbow Way Road.
Okay, that's excellent info. Thank you.
And that will be required to be improved.
Mr. Tully, hold on, you've got to come forward if you're going to speak into the mic.
And I believe, I'm going to have Washoe County planning staff confirm this, but I believe Rainbow Road will have to be improved as part of this process.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can answer that. Yeah, part of the conditions from the previous approval was the road should be improved to the International Fire Code standards, which Fish Springs Solars already did a portion of the road. We will continue the same level of improvement to make it an all-weather surface.
So this was approved by county?
That is correct.
Okay, through a county permitting process. Got it.
Okay, any other questions or comments at this time from the body? Before we vote, I think we have public comment.
We do. I have received two, I believe, and the first I have is Scott Finley, and then I believe next would be Susan. Is that correct?
Let us take a moment to just get the copies distributed.
Too short, so you want to share.
Donald and I like each other well enough to share. We'll figure it out.
Are these the same or different? Oh, these are all the same. These aren't two different people. Well, they said they had two different comments, so I didn't know.
Oh, that's why.
What?
Please make up the two, so can we share?
Of course.
Because this is what. Let's see.
Yeah, because, let's see. Let me, yeah, good idea.
They look the same. I thought you just said take one down with the too short.
Great.
They're the same.
So as far as the fire protection services can take a minimum of 2 hours, that's what was stated at the Board of County Commissioner meeting. So it could take longer. It's due to the remoteness of the transmission lines. Please enter my comment in these documents into the record per NRS 241. My name is Scott Finley. I am a resident of Washoe County and have a military background in the financial management and comptroller career field of the United States Air Force. Approving the regional plan amendment for Prana Solar poses a threat to national security and therefore Nevada's security, which in turn threatens Washoe County security. The Regional Planning Governing Board must not approve an amendment to the 2019 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan to add a new regional utility corridor and regional utility site. According to the Regional Plan Amendment findings, the Regional Planning Governing Board shall consider the intergovernmental impacts as criteria during consideration of a proposed amendment to the regional plan. For intergovernmental impacts, it states that the proposal to amend the 2019 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan to add a new regional utility corridor and a new regional utility site is not anticipated to result in an intergovernmental impact. How is it not considered an intergovernmental impact when there will be a high voltage transmission line standing as high as 215 feet and less than 10 miles from Hurlong, easily overlooking the Sierra Army Depot? The high voltage transmission lines will require regular maintenance. For all we know, some of the maintenance workers may end up being Chinese spies or foreign adversaries seeking to surveil the Sierra Army Depot in order to gain strategic intel on our military readiness and various classified activities. In case you are not aware, the Sierra Army Depot was built in 1942 as one of several ammunition storage facilities located far enough inland to be safe from Japanese attack. yet close enough to Western military posts and ports to facilitate shipment of supplies. The site also met the requirement that the depot be in a dry and isolated area. Today, the Sierra Army Depot offers a range of unique logistics, sustainment, and maintenance capabilities, such as a 10,000-foot long runway capable of supporting military and commercial aircraft. For these reasons, the Regional Planning Governing Board must not approve an amendment to the 2019 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan to add a new regional utility corridor and regional utility site. Piranha Solar cannot be trusted. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Finley.
And we have one more comment from Susan V.
My name is Susan Van Ness. I'm a Washoe County citizen, and please put my comments into the record. I'm going to play for you something. This was from May 9th. This was at the Board of County Commission meeting. Piranha did their presentation. I went outside with Mr. Hooper, who owns the land, and he said that Piranha sold the permit to a company in Singapore. So what I'd like to know is, how come we have Piranha here if everything's been sold to a company in Singapore? Now, this is a long video, but I'll just play the words, and you're hearing from the consultant for Mr. Vermeer and the landowner, Mr. Hooper.
But you could get sued.
So this Piranha, he recently purchased this company, right?
No.
Piranha, or he named it that. He
named it Piranha because Piranha,
he's
an
the
Indian.
first owner. I know he's
an Indian man.
I've researched him.
And he believes in, things like Hinduism and stuff. And in that religion, Prana is the word for the world's life force.
Can you hear it?
And so in his head, it was, the life forces of the sun.
Yeah, life force, except for the
And that's why he named it Prana. And
antelope.
so he created Prana, and then it is true, he sold that project
He did.
to another company called Plus Renewables out of Singapore.
Okay, I knew he sold
So
it.
then Plus Renewables will actually be the company who are going to take over these special use permits and will be implementing that stuff. And so that's why it's important not to be talking
In my
Prana.
research,
You don't talk to Prana. What you need to do is
Why did we issue the permit to Prana then? Because in my research, I found that other company.
Because Prana applied for it, but the permits go with the land. They don't go with an individual applicant or owner.
Okay, so Piranha,
So what'll happen is when the new owner comes in, he takes over the permit and he has to follow all the conditions of the permit. So that's why it's important not to ask Prana, what are you going to give?
but Piranha was here applying for the permit, so this is a bit.
What you have to do is you have to make sure that you have conditions in that special use permit that are enforceable. And so, for example,
So was this introduced to the county commissioners?
Yes,
they knew
it. They know that.
Okay,
And
and
then
that wasn't put in our
for example, the
for
commissioner.
the people. We have to know, because I researched. Okay, I've got the full video. This was the consultant who consulted with Mr. Vermeer. This was Mr. Hooper that owns the land. At the end of it, he said, I want it all to go to Nevada Energy. So my question is, why is Piranha here and what are we doing? Who are we giving the permit to? I have no idea.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, any additional public comment at this time?
I've not received any more public comment cards at this time.
Thank you so much. I'll bring it back to the body. Any additional questions at this time? Ms. Andriova?
I was just going to ask Mr. Prana if it's possible that he address some of those points, please.
Absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity, Sean Vimeri. So I was there at the May 9th meeting, and I did hear that. And out of the concern from what was said, the Board of County Commissioners called me back at the next meeting, and rightfully so, because there is an Army Depot. From May 9th to the following meeting, Prana Energy, especially me, submitted direct evidence from our meetings with Sierra Army Depot spanning almost 2 years, and including emails from the Army Depot from the garrison manager. Everything was submitted to the board to show there is no national security issue. They have been informed about the project. We've approached them to sell the power to them. The file actually also went all the way to Pentagon, the Office of Energy Initiative. And all that evidence was given to the board. And the purpose of that second meeting was, should we bring back the permit for reconsideration? And with a vote of 3-2, they decided there's no need to bring back the permit for reconsideration. And Vice Chair Herman was at the meeting. Commissioner Clark was also at the meeting. So 3-2, they said there's enough substantial evidence that was provided that shows the Army Depot knows about this project. I personally did a 2-hour presentation on the Army Depot. So I do appreciate the concerns. It does pain me that very quickly politics can bring in religion, so many other things. So I'm trying not to address those things, including race. Everything was brought up at the May 9th meeting, but we stuck to the technical facts. And excuse me, I'm getting a little emotional here, because I'm an engineer who builds things as safely as possible. But a lot was said. So since then, all I could do was present the evidence and let the county decide. So.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any additional comments or questions of the board? Ms. Breckus.
Yeah, for me, the issues of national security really rise to a focus of beyond the local government concerns. So I'm not seeing that. Now, as a land use, the depot, and I was at the depot 2 years ago in June, where they're changing of the leadership there. I'm sure we were all invited. It was a very wonderful experience to be out there. It is quite a historic but also large installation. And so as a neighbor 10 miles within in the fire concerns, I think those are legitimate concerns. But I'm hearing enough evidence through the Washoe County permitting and through these concerns that the protections are in place. And particularly these last statements that record of conversations or interactions with that neighbor have been entered into the record. So I can be comfortable on the concerns of the line. And this has come up at Tumwa, it's come up at Reno, is this issue of when we cross the state line and how good our, and it comes in at different procedures, how good our communication is or our notification procedures, because I think Nevada revised statutes doesn't, care about that. But those are concerns to me, I have had in the past about is California, our rural neighbors getting notified. I really like the fact that my colleague to the right has a relationship with the Sierra Board of Supervisors. That's a good thing. But not seeing any other objections and hearing that the record has been supplanted by understanding from the military installation, I think I can be comfortable at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Breckus. Any other comments from the board? I'm going to echo the comments that Ms. Breckus has raised and also start from the starting point. Our Earth is quickly warming. We know that climate change is both real and human caused. So the desire of our community to not be the fastest warming community in the country, the desire of some of my colleagues on this body who are working every day to ensure that our solar canopy is robust and growing, also is the reason why solar energy is such an important component of that. I'm sorry to the applicant that some of the comments have been both focused on nationalistic tendencies, some that sound in jingoistic racism, as well as the concerns about a person's ethnic background. They have no role in this community. We are a very diverse and welcoming community, and for that I apologize. I think there is certainly sufficient evidence here, and the Washoe County Commission approved this. As we sit on a regional body, we both take into account the interests of the County Commission and that they have supported it along the process through the various iterations of appeals and going back. I know there was some confusion about the noticing requirements below. Also cautioned and counsels that they've done their homework. The Washoe County planning staff are excellent. They leave no stone unturned. I'm certain that the fire concerns are legitimate. We are fortunate to live here in Northern Nevada, where we have some of the best interlocal agreements and the best firefighters in the world. And their ability to interact in the urban interface, I think, is a very important component of fire adaptive communities as well as fire resilient communities. So in that regard, I think, again, Ms. Breckus is correct that there is a sufficient record that the safety issues will not be implicated. On top of that, of course, Ms. Prunty has already indicated our role here is very different than the role of the Washoe County Commission. And so I know we try to tailor our comments to the role that we play here at this body. And so with that in mind, I'm going to be supportive. Any additional questions or comments at this time? Hearing none, Mr. Clerk, I'm going to call for a roll call vote.
Chair, I believe we need a motion first.
Oh, I thought Ms. Dewar had already done the motion.
No, I had-
Excuse me, my apologies.
I
Can
asked
get
a lot of
motion, please?
questions.
You did, which is absolutely, you've done a great job. Can I get a motion, please?
Motion to approve. I move to adopt the RPGB Resolution 2305 regarding an amendment to Map 3 of the 2019 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan based on the findings listed in the staff report.
I'll second that motion. Bybee for the record.
I have a motion by Ms. Taylor, a second by Ms. Bybee. Any additional comments at this time from the body? Hearing none, I'll call for a roll call vote, please.
You got it. Paul Anderson? Aye. Devin Reese?
Aye.
Donald Abbott?
Aye.
Clara Andreola?
Aye.
Jenny Breckus?
Aye.
Mike Clark?
Aye.
And Naomi Dewar?
Aye.
Jean Herman?
I'm going to stick with my nay.
Kathleen Taylor?
Aye.
And Charlene Bybee.
Aye.
I believe we have 9 for and 1 against.
Okay, motion carries. Dr. Smith, item B.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item 8B is a presentation by staff, possible feedback regarding an update to the Truckee Meadows annual report. We have Shani Sousa, regional planner, to take us through the website.
Okay, Shani Sousa, Team RPA for the record. I'm going to be taking you through our Truckee Meadows annual report, also known as the TMAR. And just to give you a little bit of background, the requirements for our annual reporting come from NRS, which requires each local government and affected entity to submit a report to the RPC and RPGB by April of each year. This coordinated annual reporting program helps with gathering data to show how the region is performing with our regional plan. So now I'll take you through the site and I'll give you guys some highlights. Some of you may be familiar with, we had 5 sections previously, and this year we added a section. So we have population, dwelling units, housing, land use, employment, and summaries. So we'll scroll down to our first section, which is population. And as you can see, all of our graphs are interactive. So if you hover over, you can see those specific values, which is nice. And so when we're looking at population growth over time, we can see that growth is steadily occurring in each of the jurisdictions per each year. And you can also look at, like I said, each of these values, but you can also isolate by jurisdiction. So if you just want to see Reno or Sparks or Washoe County. And in 2022, we can see that there is more of an increase than in previous years. Scrolling down, how are we forecasted to grow over the next 20 years? We have an average growth rate of 0.92%, and we can see our consensus forecast here shown, as well as a breakdown of our demographics. Next, we're on to dwelling units. So we have this broken down both by jurisdiction as well as units by tier. So this is units by tier since 2018. You can see that each year, Tier 2 is steady. And then you can see that in 2020, we had a jump in mixed-use core dwelling units. And then following that, Tier 1 is a small but steady increase as well. Then we break this down further by type of unit. So we have our single family and multifamily. And what's interesting here is for mixed-use core, Tier 1 and Tier 2, from 21 to 22, we can see an increase in multifamily. And then that follows over jurisdictionally as well. You can see it here for Reno and for Sparks. I think you can. Okay, our next section, which is our new section, is housing in Washoe County. And we thought this was really important to add this year because we were part of the Regional Strategy for Housing Affordability in 2019. So we really wanted to highlight some of the information that was also in that strategy. So here you can see things like median home sales price. You see a significant increase from 2020 to 2021 and growing. Then we have our average rental price for 2 bedrooms, which is around $1,400. Scrolling down, we included our median income, around $75,000. As well as the percentage of those who rent versus those who own. We're at about 42% for those who rent and 58% for those who own. Then we also included our vacancy rate by dwelling unit, which is slowly going down each year. And our average apartment vacancy rate is 2.95%. And then this is just a call out for our affordable housing tracker, which was actually brought to you at the previous meeting during our home consortium review as well. And this is an inventory of our affordable housing, specifically subsidized housing projects and contract details, but we just wanted to make it easily accessible as well. So check that out as well when you have more time. Next is land use. This is land use in total built acres. This is historically and in more recent years, both jurisdictionally once again, as well as by tier. Through this, we also included our regulatory project counts, which are master plan amendments, projects of regional significance, and regional plan amendments. And we also included the acreage with our master plan land use changes as well. Then our last interactive piece is employment. So here you can see our consensus forecast total jobs and our average employment growth rate of 1.05%. Then we break this down further by industry, and we can look at this graph. You can see 2022 and 2021, so you can see those increases or decreases. And where we see some increases this time was construction and manufacturing, transportation and warehousing, healthcare and social assistance, as well as accommodation and food services. And for accommodation and food services, we had seen a decline in previous years due to the pandemic, so it's nice to see that this is raising again. And then this is broken down more in percent share. And then our final section is summaries. We took those submitted reports from each of the entities, and then we combined them and tried to sum them up for you guys, but you can also review that main submitted report from each of the entities or jurisdictions. And I hope you guys get a chance to go in there and look at it. We had fun making it, and that concludes my presentation. Myself and Jeremy are available for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Souza. Appreciate it. I thought the presentation was outstanding, and certainly I can tell that you had a lot of fun, but it also just looks fantastic. It's super interactive, and
Thanks.
Really excited to see it. I sort of tootled around on it privately, and there's a lot of data there, so thank you for the good work you've done. I'll come for question and answer from the body. Does anyone have any questions or comments at this time? Okay, Mr. Clerk, or do we have any public comment on this item?
We have not received any that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you so much. I'll bring it back for deliberation. Can I get a motion, please?
I'll make a motion.
I have a
to
motion by Ms. Dewar to
accept the report.
A second by Ms. Andriola. Any additional questions or comments at this time? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Dr. Smith, item 8C.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item 8C, this is Jeremy Smith, the record. Item 8C is a presentation and update regarding the public infrastructure plan effort that we have commenced. And I'll start us out. We're going to share this presentation between myself and Chris Tolley. So you could go to the first slide for me, that'd be great. Bless you. Okay, so as many of you are well aware, we have been engaged for some time since the 2019 update, really, in what we've been calling the public infrastructure. First, it was the Public Infrastructure Investment Plan. We shortened that to Public Infrastructure Plan, recognizing that it's more than just about investment, but that is part of it. Some of the kind of an overview of why we're doing this. Number one, we're trying to organize our understanding of regional infrastructure and facility provisioning in Washoe County, and especially in the Truckee Meadows TMSA area. This falls, the reason for this is it's in the mandate of state law. In NRS 278.0274, the contents of the regional plan specifically call for us to address this kind of activity around 5 infrastructure and facility service domains, which I'll show you in the next slide. And we have historically done that in the regional plan, but we actually upped the game at the 2019 plan by adding policy PF1, which creates regional standards for infrastructure and facilities in those 5 domains. And so we're definitely moving in that direction. You'll see that this PIP project is really about continuing that track and bringing that information to bear. We held ourselves to the fire and created policy PF3, which called for us to create this plan. And we hope and think that it's going to lead to an increased ability for us to coordinate regionally around things like wastewater, water, traffic, that sort of thing, because we'll be working from a shared understanding of how our systems are organized and what the data is telling us about those systems. And finally, that's going to help this body, our RPC, and all of the decision makers in the region to work from a data-driven perspective. Next, please. So the 5 areas that state law indicates that regional planning should be involved with in terms of public facilities are water, potable water, right? Wastewater, stormwater and flood control, transportation and roads, and that includes multimodal, and education or schools. And so we have developed relationships with all of the entities, agencies, organizations that are involved in providing these 5 things. I'm going to turn it over to Chris, who's going to talk about the first goal.
Chris Tolley, Team RPA again. So this is goal 1, and this flows really from PF3, which Jeremy talked about, which required the creation of the public infrastructure plan. Again, we did that in 2019 as part of that update. And so this is pretty basic, create the public infrastructure plan. And as Jeremy mentioned, this is really trying to organize, understand the systems regarding the 5 domains, which we looked at on 2 slides ago. And in the document, it will be presenting information that we gather from basically the regional perspective through the regional lens. And we've got a couple examples we'll talk about. And that would be presented, each of the domains that Jeremy talked about or presented would have their own section or chapter in the document, again, presented from the regional level. When we consider, look at something like the Regional Water Management Plan or the Regional Transportation Plan, those are providing the great level of detail that each of those entities you would expect carried through. And we would be taking the regionally significant pieces from that and putting that into our contents, but otherwise pointing to those other documents throughout the region. And then to just kind of break down or provide an example, we've got the top map surrounded by the Truckee Meadows service area in both instances, but the top one is showing the Tama service boundary, and the bottom one is showing the water reclamation facilities throughout the region. So we have kind of a compare and contrast. We have Tama, which is a single entity, plus a couple others addressing water, and then we have sewer, which is broken up into basically five boundaries, including also septic in the area. So the who, what, when, and where, and why of public infrastructure, again, is the kind of information that we're going to be presenting in there. So who, already talked about Tama and sewer. What, they're really dealing with water, either delivery or treatment of water. When, what are important timeframes that we would want to represent in there related to CIP, the capital improvement plan processes, or construction, maintenance, any of the important things that would be representative of a regional level of understanding. Where, we've already talked about it, but the boundaries of each, or their significant facilities. And then why? Really, they're both in service of clean water, but we would have additionally also transportation, and then water, and then not water, but stormwater, flood, and then schools.
Okay, back to me, Jeremy Smith, for the record. Goal 2 is in keeping with our data analytics track at Team RPA, is really about coalescing and bringing together, gathering data about these systems. And so both spatial and non-spatial data to create that one-stop shop for being able to get this kind of information. One thing that I will point out is that we are trying to be brokers of the regional level of information so that we're not giving out the very specific information about facilities, and basically we'll understand who can we send folks to get that. But and I'll show you how we're kind of looking to approach it from a regional perspective. So first off, we saw Shawnee's great presentation about the Truckee Meadows annual report. And basically every year, because of state law, we are required to ask the jurisdictions and affected entities to submit to us a written report of how they have furthered the goals and visions of the regional plan. And so that has been happening year over year for a long time, but there typically wasn't a lot going on. So we really did buff up the regional, our annual report with regional statistics, brought those summaries of those reports to bear. But we also thought, isn't this a great time for Team RPA to expand our ask? Every year, these folks are already thinking about submitting information to us. Why not align a couple of other requests that will help serve us in terms of this public infrastructure? So the first thing that we asked for over the past 2 years, I believe, was at the time of the annual report submittal to also send to us a refresh of infrastructure data. So for example, if it was the city of Reno, they submit a report, they may also give us the location of sewer lines, the location of sewer sheds, information about pavement preservation. You know, whatever it is that they have in terms of usually GIS data describing infrastructure, we're asking for that refresh annually. And so that's building consistency in our process, consistency in what we expect from the jurisdictions and what they expect to have to give us. And then we know that we're always, within 1 year of the up-to-date information at a minimum. So that's been a great, it's been successful, and we've been doing this for a couple of years, and now we're starting to actually get, very good adherence to our requests and getting the data. And additionally, the third thing we ask for at that same time, kind of repurposing our ask, is for CIP information. And so really kind of two components to that. One is, what did you do over the past calendar or fiscal year? We're still kind of working through that concept in terms of meeting the needs of your CIP. What did you actually build, and how much did you spend, and where did it happen? And so we can create a summary of what happened. And as we go through time and we have each year's summary, we're going to really start building an understanding of where we've been spending money in terms of capital investment. The second piece is also please give us your adopted CIP. The timeframes work out pretty good with budgeting and the timeframe of this report. And so in that way, we can say, okay, we know what you did last year, and as we go through time, years before that, and also every year we'll have a new outlook on what are we planning in the next 5 years. And so we're working to figure out the best way to present that regionally. Now, so here's an example of the stage we're in right now, which is just a giant data mashup. We've been throwing it all into ArcGIS. We've got it organized by those 5 domains. We're having a meeting next week of the Regional Plan Update Working Group where we're going to be focusing on the infrastructure data with staff and engineering and public works and planning staff from the jurisdictions and affected entities to look at what we have and make sure everyone's on board and understands what we're trying to do and fill in any gaps in the data that we might encounter. So then moving on from, we're not planning to show this kind of material in an online viewer, but we are planning to show this kind of material. So you may remember from the 2019 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan that we invented this 40-acre hexagon grid or hexagon framework. And what that allows us to do, and that shape there is the TMSA, obviously, it allows us to compare many different variables in one common footprint. So basically, we're taking that underlying information, we're sucking it up into each individual hexagon that it interacts with, and then we're able to overlay the hexagon frameworks to understand these regional level, how things compare. Are there alignments? Do we have good capacity in certain areas for all infrastructure domains, or do we have a mismatch where we maybe have very good school capacity, but we have a sewer issue? And just trying to identify, spatially where we're spending, where we have capacity, what are the areas we're serving, and what are we planning to do, and kind of bring that together in this comparative framework. Pass back to you, Chris.
So on to goal 3. So through goal 2, we're talking again about combining and coalescing the information, and goal 3 is deploying of that information into our processes. So we have design and implement policy improvements to the 2019 regional plan. And we see these basically in 2 bins. In the policy and process, then we'll talk about the cases bin on the next slide, but the 2 primary policy improvements we see through this process would be getting back in, looking at PF1, which Jeremy talked about, to open us up with the 5 domains, if there are any improvements to that policy that needs to be made, as well as looking at the tiers. And the example you can see on the slide, the map, the gray and the blue, the shades of blue are all the various tiers. And those were based off of the local jurisdictions master plan, as well as our understanding from 2017 to 2019, roughly, about public infrastructure. So this process is upping our game, gathering a more complete set, up-to-date set of information about public infrastructure and CIP that would then be used to inform or refine the tiers in the regional plan. The other big thing that we talk about more at kind of a staff level is the processes, which Jeremy talked about also, and that is The intent is to maintain the up-to-date infrastructure data or CIP information, and that we rely on working our collaboration with the jurisdictions to ask for that information through the processes. So memorializing a process in the regional plan, I think, is one thing that we've identified as a possibility. And this is really all in service of the informed planning, or increasing our ability to make informed planning decisions and bringing the planning side closer together to the public works capital improvement side, in terms of, at least from our view, at the 30,000-foot level. So then to talk about cases, and our statutes and the regional plan basically say that we are to look at, to review and consider changes to the master plans or the entities' plans, the forward-looking documents. So this is all in service of that end, to increase, again, our game, or our abilities to do that. And we see a few different ways in which that is going to be basically available to everybody. So through this public information or public infrastructure plan process, we would gather data, turn that into information, which would inform the initial review memo that we produce, that is part of the local jurisdictions process. So we provide comments, and then we would have upfront information greater than we already do regarding public facilities and services. For example, if there was a sewer proximity issue, just straight example, that is something that we could identify through the data we have regarding public facilities. And then that would go to the jurisdictional process and come back eventually to us, as we saw earlier today with the regional plan amendment, where we would do our official review. And again, that was just an example looking at sewer proximity. But that is where we would look to see if the jurisdictions, how they address that, if it was necessary to address it, either in their staff report or through conversations. But we still raise that issue early on in the process and then basically double check that. So the public infrastructure plan, the data, the information that comes from it will lead to improvements for our cases as well as the policy side of it. So then this slide is really talking about our feedback loop, and we've kind of been hitting on that very slightly. But this is really in support of the jurisdictions and entities. Sure, we're asking for information from them, but we're also supporting them with the data that turns to information that we're providing from our 30,000-foot eye-in-the-sky view, as well as processes that support consistency, asking for the data annually, turning that into spatial representation of that data, and then embedding that into our processes, such as the initial review memo we talked about on the previous slide. And then finally, coordinate information sharing to optimize planning. I think this is what our end goal is, even though we'll never get there fully, but we're working there to provide regional information about infrastructure planning, and then being this is a reference document to the regional plan, pointing to the appropriate entity to handle the details, I guess, of that. And I'll pass it back to Jeremy.
Thank you, Chris. Jeremy Smith again for the record. So there's my ridiculous stool image that I put together. But, this concept of what are the three legs of the stool at regional planning? And I think the way that we think about it is we have our regulatory role, the conformance review against the regional plan for master plan amendments for projects of regional significance. We also have really turned the horsepower up over the past several years in terms of our data and analytics and providing information. And then finally, we have a role to play in the community as a regional coordinator and facilitator of bringing together and hosting those regional conversations. And so just to kind of sum up what we just talked about, what we're trying to do with the PIP is really enhance our understanding of those public facility systems in the Truckee Meadows so that we know who's doing what, where things are happening, and then bolster that with an understanding of, okay, the data, where are these things, and also what have we done and what are we planning to do to address those systems and to keep them healthy and whole and maintain them. And then, as Chris was talking about, all right, now we've got this data, how do we turn it into actionable information that we can actually use? And that, we think, will come to bear when we're doing our initial review memo, providing that information to the jurisdictions up front, using it in our case review, using it in any review of our regional plan policies, and of course then to foster continued and enhanced coordination. As you know, you approved a request for qualifications to utilize the remaining funds from our regional plan implementation monies that were hanging around since the 2019 plan. And so we were able to select Hansford Economic Consulting to help us with this PIP project. Some of the main goals of that and scope will be really, her group is an expert at dealing with capital improvement plans, and that is not something that we are expert at. And so everyone does it a little bit differently. Reno versus Sparks versus Tumwa. We're going to have Catherine help us bring that together and translate it into that regional framework. Also, other stuff that'll be there, continued data gathering, stakeholder involvement, consideration of case studies. So how are these things being addressed in other areas, and what can we learn from that? Data analysis, and then to some degree, Catherine's group can help us with the creation of the document, though that is squarely on our shoulders to create the document. And then in terms of engagement around the PIP, I mentioned that we're going to have the Regional Plan Update Working Group meeting next week, where we're going to engage staff at the jurisdictions and entities. We have done a few events already, and we're looking to do more. So we talked to the builders late in July 26th, I think. Some great feedback there. They're obviously concerned about infrastructure. We're hosting a series of lunch and learns or hangouts with TMRPA, where you can come and join us as we move towards that October 2024 Regional Plan Update. Excited to talk about the One Region event. It's our now annual event. We're doing in September at Rancho San Rafael, and we're going to do that again this year. It's September 30th from 11 to 3. We'll post a notice of possible quorum, so everyone is invited from this board to show up and check it out. We're also planning to do a public infrastructure presentation at this year's upcoming Nevada APA conference at Tahoe. And in November, we're looking to support or to host a community conversation where we invite the community. We just did this for natural resources. It's a pretty successful thing, and it's just a way to get public feedback. And then, of course, we have our public meetings where everyone can engage on these items. I think that is it. So with that, we're happy to answer any questions and hear your feedback.
Okay, colleagues, does anyone have any questions for Dr. Smith or Mr. Tully? Go ahead, Ms. Dewar.
Yeah, just, I guess, Dr. Smith, when do you see this getting all done? Like, what's the time frame for all this, and where does it fit to something else?
Great question. I see both this and the natural resource document being drafted and in a review phase by the end of this year, so that we have...
So that's like the end of the fall. When you say this year, do you mean like 2023?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay,
So that
not fiscal year.
Not fiscal year, but the end of this calendar year, so that we have 2024 to continue to look at the documents, review them, get feedback, and work towards final acceptance a couple months in advance of October. Because part of this, as we go, is these are, we're considering them reference plans. They're the information that will lead us to some policy enhancements or suggestions that we'll want to bring forth.
So that's where I was going. Like, let's say the natural resource plan.
Mm-hmm.
Would we evaluate our projects proposals against this plan, or is that only when it comes for regional conformance, maybe?
The concept, as it stands right now, is for us to use those plans as the information behind getting new or enhanced policies into the regional plan, so that the regional plan will remain our policy document.
Okay.
And these documents can be a little more agile, because as conditions change or as we want to add information about both infrastructure or natural resources, we could do that. But anytime that it leads to a need for a new policy, that would come through this body and become an amendment.
This body, or would it go to regional planning?
Both. It would go to the Regional Planning Commission first as the technical advisory, and then come to here for
And
a
on
final.
this specific plan, though,
Yeah.
so let's take Tumwa. So Tumwa's going to do water. A number of us serve on the Tumwa board. But you've built your plan taking into presumably account Tumwa's already plan. So I don't know if this is like a circular planning, like they did a thing and then you put it in your plan and then we're measuring them against it, or is there something different here?
It's really trying for us to operate at our level, right? We're never going to be able to replace what Tumwa does. We're never going to be able to replace what the WRWC does in terms of their regional water management plan. But to our knowledge, there is no organizing document that kind of lays it all out. Yeah.
Even like the regional water plan, or are you saying that's just water? That's not
That's
the
just
road,
water and
that's
wastewater. Yeah,
not okay.
Exactly.
Okay,
Exactly.
I got it. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Ms. Bybee, did you have a comment?
Just a comment. I think the information is, what you guys do so well is data collection. And then you do your, and I loved showing the maps, the, what do we call it, the Go Bright?
The Light Bright.
The Light Bright map with all the colors. Because I was here, when we did that plan. But really the infrastructure is one of our biggest challenges, and having all this data and all of us individually in our jurisdictions as well as regionally being able to make better decisions, because we can tell you what Sparks is doing, Reno and the county, and we work better together because everything we do affects each other. And from capital improvement plans to just all the systems and the data you're providing also helps each of us to make better decisions. So on the local level, when I have this much data, my staff can sit down and go, okay, I feel like it's better informed decisions, and that's something that's critically important for us to be making sound decisions as well as fiscally responsible. Because I don't know about the rest of you, but we're facing some fiscal challenges right now. So how do we manage the money of our residents in a mindful way and get the biggest bang out of our buck and make sure we're not duplicating or missing something? And I think just the data you guys provide overall, but I love this public infrastructure plan because that'll help us coordinate better. Thank you.
Ms. Bybee, thank you for your excellent comments. Your historical knowledge is very much appreciated, and I think you're spot on. I think the work that you have done even to get to this point is very impressive. I'm interested, of course, to see how our consultant will take what you have started as the framework, meaning it's whether they have to take the chair and lay some fabric on it or what they'll do with that. But I think that'll be helpful too. If you find yourselves at a roadblock moment with any of the regional partners, you'll have to let us know that, right? I make an assumption that all the planning departments are very good and on good terms with one another, but it is a collaborative and cooperative approach because it requires buy-in from the other agencies to sort of, I guess, put their data into your hands. And so in that regard, you'll have to keep us apprised of that. I, like Ms. Dewar, was interested to know the timeline, but it sounds like towards the end of this year will at least be in draft form. Obviously, better does not necessarily have to be faster. So I think you all are encouraged to take your time with the ultimate work product because I do think the work is important. And I think it's probably just scratching the surface in terms of what its uses can be applied to. And so I'll be interested to see what it becomes as it moves through the various iterative process that engaged. Let me see if any other colleagues have questions. Ms. Breckus, our planner.
Yeah, good job. I think you guys are starting to get there. I've been pretty critical. I voted not to support the plan as its adoption because it was absent this component, that natural resources plan, and I was not surprised that we're, scraping in to get those in the 5-year. One suggestion, and it may be, a big lift, but I would think about a data component of approved development projects that are somehow on the books, if you will, active, that also share the need for certain infrastructure expansions, enlargements, pro investments, so that there is an understanding when someone is reviewing a project, from the land use perspective, if it's one coming through, someone could see, well, for leapfrogging purposes, oh, this one is, 2 miles out. It's been on the books for 5 years. This needed this, and the other thing, and we're leapfrogging above that. It helps, I think, have a mindset of how to address some of the parameters of approval, disapproval, decision-making related to leapfrogging. I'll just use the term leapfrogging, and timeliness and concurrency. It also helps, and I know that with transparency and public budgeting, because when I talk to the capital improvement folks, like Tumwa, they know they're talking to people who are in the path of a certain improvement or so on. So that's when they get their head together and talk about how to use those growth funds to make the improvements onto their CIP. So now everyone would know the characterization of projects that are reliant upon different infrastructure levels that you're characterizing. And I think it helps with public budgeting. I think it helps with transparency. And all the jurisdictions have their own, components to recognize those partnerships. Front loading. I don't know if RSD still does the front loading, capacity loading agreements. Reno has the some extension credit sort of things for oversizing. So it's all out there, but it's never been databased. And I think that's a deficiency. Many years ago, when I started as a junior planner, on every case, we had an extensive analysis of every approval that was current in the vicinity that the individual parcel had gone through. And it really, it's been a while since I've looked at Washoe County or Sparks. I think Washoe County always did a good job, but, we keep out there, I think in this jurisdiction, so many legacy approvals that, we haven't tightened up. So it's very helpful, I think, for people to have a database of what is out there, what is approved, and it's never been, gathered. And I think that can help other ways, project review, budgeting, and transparency. So you're following Dr. Smith, right? Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional comments at this time? Okay, hearing none, I'll ask, are there any public commenters on this item, item 8C, as in Charlie?
We have not received any that I'm aware of.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. I'll bring it back to the board for a motion. Can I get a motion, please?
Okay.
The motion from Ms. Stewart to approve. Any
Sure.
additional comments, or can I get a second, please? I'll second. I have a motion by Ms. Stewart, a second by me. Any additional comments or questions at this time? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, Dr. Smith, item 9A, and I guess we'll go over to the fabulous Dr. Beth Smith.
I'll take the promotion to doctor. Sure.
Today, just today.
Thank you so much, Chair Reese. So I'm going to start with some very happy news that happened earlier today, and then also some thanks. So we had the ribbon cutting of the 8th brand new school in Washoe County, thanks to the WC1 initiative. So we've officially crossed the $1 billion mark in investment in our educational structures, and Jaywood Raw Elementary is the 8th brand new school. It was a true pleasure to have many of you with us today. And so Councilwoman Taylor was there, Chair Reese, and then also Councilman Abbott. And a very special thank you. Well, I'm going to get to you. I'm saving the best for last. And I do want to formally thank Councilwoman Dewar because, and she deserved it. The work she did on behalf of the city of Reno with the school district led to greatly improved bike paths, walking paths, trees, the best traffic planning, and roadway changes. And the building of this school really delivers on what I've been talking about for 2 years on this governing board in the way that we endeavor to work with our government partners and really building facilities that become the hub of the communities that they serve, that we all serve. So thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. And for anyone else who wants to get in on the fun, I'm also very proud to say that our board approved just over $100 million for the new Debbie Smith CTE Academy. So that project is very much back on track. And we will be having a groundbreaking event on September 12th at 11 a.m. You will all receive formal invitations, but for those of you that keep your notes, we would love to have you. And so that's going to be one of our next exciting projects. Next up is just an update on our facilities modernization plan, and we're going to be continuing those community conversations starting in September and going through the fall. And just as a reminder for everyone, the facilities modernization plan really is going to become the roadmap for the next 10 years related to the WC1 planning, capital improvements, and we'll really be engaging our communities with that. So again, we'll be picking back up with that in September. And the last item for today is a reminder that Monday is back to school for a majority of our students in the Washoe County School District. So with all of those little children, we have so many more pedestrians in the morning. So I am going to ask everyone and ask all of my governing board members to also carry that back to your communities as well. Slow down, be aware of the school zones. Even when you're out of a school zone, but you know you're near a school, keep a close eye on that. And again, great partnership has been shown by both the City of Reno, City of Sparks, and the county with a lot of improvements that have been made near schools on behalf of the cities and the county. And we really, really appreciate that, because keeping our kids and families safe on the way to school and home is really something that we have to bear as a community together. So thank you.
Mr. Chair.
President Smith, thank you so much for that report. Ms. Stewart.
I wanted to append to Ms. Smith's report, and what she's referencing, since many people are here new, is that for several years, myself, when I guess it started when I was chair, Ed Lawson and Von Hartung, we served as a subcommittee to this board to talk about projects of regional significance, and particularly schools. And all of us, many of us, had challenges with schools being built and not really integrated into the road network that was planned. There was one in particular that came up in my ward, Doral Academy, which was 1,000 students, private charter school, public charter school, to be built on just 5 acres, and a lot of concern about how transportation was going to occur. Well, when our trustee Smith here joined, we changed the conversation a bit. She really rejected this idea that we needed to do a separate level of regulatory review, which I would say all three of us, Mr. Hartung, Mr. Lawson, and myself, felt we did, because we'd seen all troubles in all of our jurisdictions, and we weren't believers. We weren't really trusting that the schools were hearing us, that they needed to be sensitive to these issues when they're built. And think about it's the safe routes to schools policy. It's the how do you drop off and pick up, safely and not have people get run over or not have endless traffic jams. So kudos to you for listening to us. And you made a pledge that if we kind of told that, you would do a better job in terms of gathering people building schools and make sure a different outcome. And it looks like you have. So kudos.
Thank you so much.
That's what happened today. I mean, it started here. I just want to say, at this board.
It's a gentle reminder that the work we do is important, and you've proven that, the both of you, in working on this issue. Thank you for that. Okay, I'll close that item 9A as an apple and move to 9B. Members, does any member have any reports to offer? Nope. We'll come to Dr. Smith then for a director's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a brief report here quickly. I mentioned in the presentation I gave that we did the community conversation about the natural resource effort at Bartley Ranch. It was really a fun thing. It was attended by about 40 people, give or take. We did several little charrettes where we gained feedback about regional trails policy, source water protection policy, and a neat policy we're calling natural resource consideration areas as an idea to, as Chris mentioned in the PIP presentation, when we do our initial review, we want to be able to provide as much upfront information about what is concerning to us as possible. And so the NRCA policy would be exactly that for natural resource concerns. We could provide a data-based approach right up front to that. So those were some of the things we covered there. And that's similar to what we'll do in November for the public infrastructure plan. I mentioned we talked to the builders. That was really good. And that was in collaboration with the Northern Nevada chapter of the APA. So that actually counted for people's AICP credits, which is pretty neat. Just going to plug again the One Region event, September 30th in Rancho San Rafael. It's going to be awesome. We're going to have trivia and prizes. There's going to be some games to get feedback. We'll have booths from a wide range of folks. The tribes were there last year. We had the Bicycle Alliance. We had RCI talking about source water. It's a great opportunity to learn about great projects going on in the region, and of course, snacks.
That's Bartley also.
That's at Rancho.
Oh, Rancho.
Yeah, and we'll, like I say, publish the notice of possible quorum, and we'll be sending you official invite coming up soon here. And so then finally, I just want to point out that our next meeting will be here in these chambers on October 12th at 2 p.m. And some of the items that I think we've been sort of waiting on, but will be coming forward We probably will have a discussion about the lands bill and the process in relation to the regional plan. In October, we start our budget preview, so time to start talking about budget again. My evaluation will be coming forward. Every October is also when we do the annual housekeeping update to the regional plan. So any little things we found through the year, we'll make sure to bring that forward. And then I believe Nate and I were talking about bringing just an overall item about the 2024 update to kind of reground us in some of the plans we have for that and to address some of the questions we heard today. So there you go. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. I appreciate that. The One Region event, I was able to go last year, as were a number of us. I thought it was fantastic. There were a number of booths and community groups that were there. I think one of the projects that we ended up launching at the City of Reno happened from those discussions related to Bee City USA, and there were some great groups that there were able to provide some information about those organizations and what they do. So very a good event last year, and certainly I expect it'll be even larger this year. So I would encourage my colleagues to attend. Any other questions at this time on this one? Okay, we'll go to Ms. Prunty for item 9C for legal counsel report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jessica Prunty for the record. Many of you received my email from earlier today. I will be following up with further action and potential collaboration. I just wanted to let you know that. Thank you.
Okay, any board comments or requests for future agenda items? Okay, I'll close that item and come back to you, Mr. Clerk, for item 11. Do we have public comment?
We have not received any that I'm aware of.
How about we'll close that item and come to number 12, written correspondence received.
Mr. Chair, we have received quite a bit of written correspondence in relation to the potential project of regional significance item for schools. That's all been compiled and is actually available on our website. Other than that, there's no written correspondence.
Dr. Smith, thank you. Anything else, Mr. Clerk?
I have nothing further.
Okay, with that, we're adjourned.